Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Kugane. I run my own YouTube channel on youtube.com/KuganeGaming, but today we're going to have a chat about the pre-constructed Chane deck over here on the FaB Foundry YouTube channel. So a little bit of background information. I did play Chane in both constructed and Blitz. I managed to get a couple of first place prizes with this hero, and I feel it's one of the better heroes in the Monarch release. It is closely tied with Bolton, which is coincidentally one of my other favorite heroes, which is kind of why I did a pre-constructed Bolton review video a few days ago on this channel as well. And well, I imported the deck just now. I actually haven't had the chance to have a look at the pre-constructed deck before because I built my own Chane deck from scratch, which by the way, if you want a fully optimized Chane deck, it can be found over on my Patreon. I have a few patrons that are enjoying that list quite a bit, and it's quite capable of holding its ground against the current metagame. It's been able to get me a couple of first place prizes here and there, like I mentioned earlier. So if you do need a competitive, fully competitive list, you can find that there. However, today we're going to be looking at the pre-constructed deck itself and give some short suggestions like how you can upgrade this with minimal investments, which will be perfect for the newer players out there. So first things first, I actually think that this deck is the best one among the pre-constructed decks from what I've seen so far, simply because of all the tools that they put in this pre-constructed deck, which is very similar to the tools you need to be able to have this deck function properly in a competitive setting. Like when I imported this deck earlier, I straight away saw like, okay, you have one copy of Underheld Rights, one copy of Vexing Malice. These are usually cards you would prefer to have two of, so getting an extra copy of these doesn't hurt. But then we have Soul Reaping, which is a one-off Chane specialization. So having one of these is perfect. You can't have more of these in your deck, but it's an extremely strong card. It can attack for 6 and it's practically free to cast because you can just banish one of your Blood Debt cards that you can play again after that anyways. There are 2 red Seeds of Agony and 2 yellow Seeds of Agony. You do need the blue one for the competitive deck as well, but the blue one is a common, so it should be rather easy to get a hold of. FaB Foundry should have the blue ones in stock anyways. You can always check out the website. We have 2 copies of the red Riftbind, a Hull from Beyond, 2 copies of the red Ghostly Visit, and then Consuming Volition. And this one actually surprised me because in my personal Chane build I did end up including this card, and when I saw they actually included it in the pre-constructed deck, I straight away realized like this deck has been properly optimized by the design team. They really knew what they're doing, because having Consuming Volition together with Chane is absolutely amazing. The Rip Through Reality is something I don't personally play, but I do see some other Chane players that opt to play this one, and it's also a really good card. And then we have a bunch of other cards that I'm personally not a huge fan of, but I guess if you're on a budget they could be quite cool as well, especially the Warmonger's Recital, which can give +3 attack to your next attack, and if it is, you can put it on the bottom of the deck. This can have a very nice combo in terms of that you play the Warmonger's Recital and then you play something like a Riftbind, because Riftbind gets +X times the number of non-attack actions that you've played this turn. So playing, for example, a Warmonger's Recital for the 3+ and then following it up by a Riftbind means that Riftbind will now get a +3 plus a +1 from its own effect, which means that this becomes a 7-hit card for just 1 resource, and on top of that it will put it at the bottom of the deck, which means that in the late game when you create your Soul Shackles you'll be able to play a card like this again. So I'm actually considering maybe adding this card into my own constructed deck or even my Blitz deck, because there is some quite fun shenanigans going on with this. Right now, personally, in my own deck, I'm running things like Art of War, so I'm not really sure what I would cut. But if you are trying to create a competitive Chane deck, having this instead of an Art of War is definitely something you could consider. Especially since you will have it anyways, right? Like if you buy this deck, you have all these cards in there anyways. There are some stuff like the Piercing Shadowfires. It's a 2-cost and this one is a 3-cost. I think in a Chane deck you kind of want your cards to be as cheap as possible. That's why I put all the 1-cost ones and the 0-cost on the field right now. And this one is technically a 0-cost because you can just banish something like a Unhallowed Rites and then be able to play this one for free. So I'm not really a huge fan of things like Seeping Shadows. I even like these Rifted Torments, even though technically they are decent cards, but having to pay 2 resources in a deck that has to go wide is quite painful. And the reason is this. So what Chane does is like once per turn you can create a Soul Shackle. I will grab one of those quickly over here. So what a Soul Shackle is, a Soul Shackle lets you well, a Soul Shackle forces you to banish the top cards of your deck at the start of your turn. And if you were to banish something like, let's say, a Ghostly Visit, which says like you can play Ghostly Visit from your banish zone, that means that the more Soul Shackles you have, the more of these Blood Deck cards you will be banishing, which means the more cards you can end up playing in your turn, especially since the effect of Chane allows us to give Go Again to one of our attacks. And on top of that we do have something like Snapdragon Skills down here, which lets us give Go Again to any attack that costs 1 or less, which again means another reason why I don't like stuff like these 2-costed attacks is because Snapdragon Skills cannot give them Go Again and they are generally quite overcasted for what they do. Like this one, for example, is like a 2-cost that deals 4 damage, while an Unhallowed Rite pretty much does the same thing and it only costs 1 resource. So yeah, not a huge fan, but on a budget you can definitely leave these in. So yeah, so as I was saying, so once per turn Chane can create a Soul Shackle. It gives you your next attack action that you play after this Go Again, and then during your next turn you will be banishing stuff from the top of your deck, which you can then play after that. And if you focus your whole strategy around the cards that I'm showing here right now, and you fill up your deck with a bunch of defense reactions like Sink Belows or Fate for Scenes, you actually have a very competitive deck. Of course, you do need a couple of Majestics that you can find in the set, namely the ones that I have over here. I think getting 2 copies of Shadow of Ursa and 2 copies of Shadow Puppetry will make the deck even better, because this one gives us another source to give something Go Again. You just play it for 0, your next attack gains +1 and Go Again, and if it hits you can look at the top card of your deck and you may banish it, which means that you might even banish another Blood Debt card if it does it. And Shadow of Ursa is another way, like this one can be played from the banished turn as an additional cost. You can banish a card with Blood Debt from your hand to give this thing Go Again. It's a 0 cost, so this is a very easy way to do some shenanigans, like let's say this one is in the banished zone and you have a Seeds of Agony in hand. You can just banish the Seeds of Agony, play the Shadow of Ursa. This one has Go Again, then you can go ahead and play the Seed of Agony from the banished zone anyways. So there's no downside to giving this Go Again. Usually, like, I mean, sometimes you don't have a card with Blood Debt in your hand and then you can only play, you can still play this from the banished zone, but then you can always do something like you create a Soul Shackle, you play it and it has Go Again anyway, so that's quite nice. Razor Reflex is a very good card. Again, like this says, target attack action with cost 1 or less gains +3, and if it hits, this attack gains Go Again, which is again why I don't like 2-cost cards. But yeah, that's pretty much it already, right? We have 1 Majestic that you want 2 copies of, and another Majestic that you also want 2 copies of. These are the most expensive upgrades that this deck really needs. When Unlimited is released, I bet you can pick up two of each of these for under $20. And then if you get like 2 more Seeds of Agony and 2 more Razor Reflex, you have yourself a very solid deck. Reaping Blade is a bit expensive right now. I personally like Reaping Blade because it does deny your opponent the ability to heal up. And you can also pick yourself up a Crown of Dichotomy, because this one does have Arcane Barrier and a very nice activated effect. I also run the Legendary Gloves, what's called the Runeblade Legendary. Let's grab that one quickly. This is an expensive card, but if you want to play Chane competitively, this is kind of something you want to aim to get eventually, because what this one does is for just 2 resources you can create yourself a rune chant token, and what a rune chant token does is like when you attack in, it deals 1 arcane damage, so it's a great way to add some extra damage to your attacks if needed, and also a way to, for example, put stuff to the bottom of the deck to banish later on in the game. Like you could, for example, activate the Grasp of the Arknight, banish yourself a Seas of, pitch yourself a Seas of Agony, and then pitch something else to go in with a Galaxy Black, for example, which then at that point will be attacking in not just for its own attack, but also the 1 extra arcane damage, which does force your opponent to either block weirdly or to pitch stuff that they don't really want to pitch. It's just a really good card, but not really in the budget territory, because I think as of right now this should be like $100 US, maybe even more. But if you want to play Chane properly, do try to get one of these, and maybe an Arcanite Skullcap. But for now, let's delete this. Oh, I did not meant to delete both of these. Let's try to undo that quickly. If you want to play competitively, try to get yourself one of these, but it's too expensive to even mention right now. So yeah, playing the deck like this, adding 2 copies of this, 2 of this, 2 of this, 2 of this, 1 extra copy of Unhallowed Rites, and 1 extra copy of Vexing Malice. How many copies are those? That's 2, 4, 6, 8, and then we have 2 here, so those are 10 cards. Right now in the deck we have 22 cards, so that does mean that you need to cut a couple of things, and I think the best thing to cut in this case would be stuff like the more expensive cards, like especially the blue Rifted Torments and maybe the Piercing Shadowvice and stuff like that. And you do need to have more sources of blue, so you will likely want to get yourself like 2 copies of a blue Vexing Malice, maybe 2 copies of a blue Demigon, and 2 copies of Unhallowed Rites, which puts you at 16 cards that you want to put into the deck at a budget. And you can probably keep all 4 of the Warmongous Rituals here, and what else should you keep? I guess the Arcanite Crackles are not bad either. I mean, it's 1 damage and it deals 1 arcane. Splitting up your damage like that is also quite good. So if you keep these cards right here, you keep yourself those Warmongous Recitals, which eventually you want to upgrade to something like maybe the legendary Runeblade specialization. What's it called? The Eclipse is a nice card to put in here. Art of War, also very nice cards to put in here. Even the common like Meet and Greet, which is a common from Crucible 4, is also a very nice card to get in here. Fetch yourself some blue copies of Binding Demigon, Vexing Malice, and Unhallowed Rites. Put 2 copies of each of these cards in the deck and just get rid of everything else, and you got yourself a very solid deck that should technically be good enough to earn you some get you some very good results in competitive events. You could also opt to, instead of the Warmongous Recitals, to add some yellow Rift Binds, because even at a 2 attack, getting that plus bonus whenever you play a non-attack action card is quite crucial, especially if you combine it with stuff like playing several Seas of Agony and then putting a Rift Bind behind that. I mean, just playing 3 Seas of Agony adds 3 arcane damage plus another 3 attack onto this card, right, which makes these 0 costs very efficient. And stuff like Shadow Puppetry is also a non-attack action, which can be good. So I think that's pretty much all I want to cover today. Maybe the video has been a little bit of a mess going through all of this stuff, but I think it should be clear enough for the average player. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I do check back on the videos regularly, so if you have any questions in terms of like what cards you would want to add in and if they are good or not, I can definitely answer that for you. You could also maybe consider picking up some cards like Command and Conquer and Enlightened Strike. Personally, I feel they don't really fit into the deck, and I prefer to have more of a control setup with lots of defense reactions, but there is definitely something to be said to going like full aggro with this deck. The cool thing about this deck though is that because you have this banishing mechanic, and most of the stuff that you banish can be played from the banish zone, you actually end up in a situation that if you keep the cost of your cards low with just 1 cost and 0 cost cards, is that you can block with 3 cards during your opponent's turn and then just keep like 1 blue card in your hand, and then that 1 blue card should be able to pay for most of the stuff that you banish. And it just feels great. It means that even though you can play a very defensive playstyle, you can still go wide rather quickly. And I think that's one of the big strengths of this deck. It can go all in terms of power by all the means of gaining go again, but it can also kind of turtle its way into gaining multiple soul shackles and then outvaluing the opponent by blocking for 9, 10 or even 11 and then still having enough resources left to pull off a very big turn. Because, I mean, think about it, right? Like, you play a couple of Seeds of Agony, you maybe need to pay like 1 cost for a Rift Binder, like 1 cost for a Ghostly Visit, and that's pretty much all you need to worry about in a deck like this. And you even have stuff like Unhallowed Rise. Like, when you play it, you can put something like a Seeds of Agony back into your deck, and it's just a very solid deck. I'm pleasantly surprised that when I opened this deck, like how competitive this one is right out of the gate without anything being added to it. We do have like some suboptimal blues in there originally, but I mean, usually you don't want to play your blues anyways, you're pitching them right, so it's not a huge deal in that regard, and all these cards are relatively easy to get a hold of. I think Shadow Puppetry, even as a first edition card, is sitting at maybe $5 or something, and I think Shadow of Ursa is sitting at $10. So even if you would, if you don't wait for unlimited listings, you can upgrade this very quickly for a very cheap price, and I think because of that, Chane is probably going to be the best deck to pick up for a new player that wants to get into Flesh and Blood and wants to start playing at like a higher competitive level. The downside of the deck is that because of this banishing mechanic and because you need to manage your resources well, it does require more game experience to make the deck work properly. But on the other hand, like, if this is the kind of deck that you learn to play and this is the deck that you can get good at, then I think you should be able to play pretty much any of the other decks other than Kano, because Kano has like a very unique playstyle that does require some practice as well. But yeah, that's all from me for today. I hope the video was useful to you. If it was, make sure to thumbs up the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, because I haven't seen many comments in my previous video, and I would love it if you can at least drop a line, even if it's something like saying hi to FaB Foundry itself. Every little comment helps with the YouTube coding or algorithm or whatever you want to call it. So please help us out, leave a comment and let us know what you think about this video series. We will soon be doing more footage of playing these games against the other content creators at FaB Foundry, so keep an eye out for that. There should be some footage coming out very soon as well. They were a couple of very fun games, so I'm looking forward to rewatching those myself, and I hope that you will watch those along with me. Anyways, take care and see you all soon.